Could you both introduce yourselves and sort of state your role in Kipo for the folks out there?
Yeah, I'm Rad Sechrist, creator and fellow executive producer. I'm Bill Wolkoff, developed Kipo and fellow executive producer with Rad.
Fantastic. Thank you guys so much. My first question is going to be for Rad, but most of these are kind of going to be for both of you, so feel free to jump in however you think fits. But for Rad, for people out there who might not be familiar with your comic that originally started everything, could you maybe talk a little bit about its history and just kind of give a general idea of what it's about?
Yeah, so I had been drawing comics for years. I actually drew comics before I got into animation, and I was always just kind of doing them on the side or at night. And I was really inspired by shows like Walking Dead and Game of Thrones, and I just wanted to do a big, epic kind of end-of-the-world narrative. And in fact, in my mind, I was thinking I was going to make it dark and gritty and kind of adult. And as I started drawing it, I think it kind of came out fun. And at one point I went, I should just lean into my natural sensibility and just keep it fun and not so adult and gritty.
Yeah, fair enough. Give people something a little different. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this question's for the both of you. So, how did Kipo come from that webcomic and then get into development as an animated TV series?
Yeah, I think one of the executives had seen the comic and was interested in it. It's funny because I think Peter Gall at one point told me, like, if you would have told me you were going to pitch me an apocalypse show, I would have told you don't even bother. But somehow you managed to make this pretty fun. And then he kind of introduced me to Bill, and you want to talk a little bit about that, Bill?
Yeah. One of the DreamWorks executives sent me Rad's webcomic, which I fell in love with the story and the idea of the world, and also Rad's truly unique and fantastic drawing style. And I was we were set up on a kind of a work drawing date, and I told Rad my ideas about how I would expand it into a TV show. And for me, it was leaning into the preserving the post-apocalyptic side of it and making those stakes very real, and leaning into the fantastic element and whimsical element that was in the DNA of Rad's webcomic. I always describe the show, and we talked about this with Rad many times, it's Walking Dead meets Alice in Wonderland. And Kipo is kind of a symbol of hope in this world, in a world where you might not, where most people wouldn't have hope and wouldn't be optimistic. She's able to see the wonder in that world. And that's kind of the seeds of how, we wanted to expand it into a TV show. And, Brad was like, all right, let's go out. And we started work dating. I say that, and I'm air quoting as I say that. And had many, many, many conversations as we built out the world, wrote scripts, Rad drew many, many more designs, and then sold it to Netflix happily.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what was your process like in expanding the story, or maybe just adapting it? Did you have to make any major changes? Did you take it in a direction that the comic wasn't going, or maybe you got a chance to do something you always wanted to do in the comic but hadn't had time to? What was that process like?
So I think the comic was very, very kind of a simple plot. It was a girl from an underground city that's kind of like grew up with a life that's kind of like our life. Like, there's not, she's never dealt with these giant monsters. She gets thrown into a world. And I kind of was treating it a little, pretty simple, like, oh, you walk along and you meet this group of people and you have a little story. And then you walk along and you meet this group of people and you have a little story. More like a long-running comic way of thinking. And when I met with Bill, he kind of just expanded it, almost, put some nitrous oxide in there. But you want to talk a little bit about that, Bill?
Sure. It was a world. What I love so much about it is it's a world that existed beyond the borders of the webcomic. As we dug into it, like there was these core two characters that were in the webcomic, Kipo and Wolf, and they did evolve a little bit as we expanded it out. But the concept of this world that had a great mutant outbreak and animals mutated out of control, and some animals are human-sized and have sentience and have adopted bits of culture from the old world and occupied these lands that all this mutant vegetation has grown over. But it's not a world that has one particular government. It's kind of this gang-ruled world. Well, that's just an amazing, deep world to set a show in, because you can see how they have to travel through these many different lands. And there's also something very powerful about telling an end-of-the-world story in a hopeful, optimistic way.
Right.
I think it grounds emotionally. I think it resonates emotionally with where we are today a little bit. Sometimes it feels like the world is ending. And if I was a kid, I think it would have helped comfort me seeing an empowering story of kids thrust into this world, and overcoming it and finding the hope and wonder in it. That was a big driving force of, in how we expanded it out. And also, because it is a very playful world, it allowed us to, tap into the playful sides of our personalities, and how we came up with the different, mutant animal characters that occupy different areas. Sometimes Rad would just draw something. But when the idea of the mutant world came, that came from just one of Rad's drawings. You had a drawing of a wolf in a Carl Sagan-esque turtleneck and a blazer, and we just filled in that backstory. That's got to be a group of wolves that found the Griffith Park Observatory, and they must have found a picture of Carl Sagan and the rebel of humanity, and they based their whole culture on that. And we were able to develop, a full story based on that. So it kind of came from many different ways, and it was just so fun to get to play in that sandbox. We also had, it was just Rad and I for developing the first couple of episodes.
Right.
But once we got our official green light series, we had this great creative team, creative writing team, and really great directors and board artists, and everybody had ownership. We ran the writers' room, by the way, like you would run a live action room. It was going all the time, and a lot of the expansion of the world also, beyond when Rad and I wrote the Bible and came in with the model. Bringing the room in was a real way to stress test that and expand it even further in ways we never would have come up with on our own.
Yeah, and I definitely want to touch on the visual look of everything too, because I feel like that tells as much of the story as the writing, as the conversations, as the dialogue. I was stunned. I mean, I watch a lot of animation. I was stunned by the visuals of this because it felt like I was watching an anime. Just kind of the style, the approach to it. And then when I found out that you guys had approached Studio Mir, I was kind of like, okay, there's that East meets West kind of style that they're sort of known for and that I'm familiar with from their past work. So can you talk about taking your designs and then translating them to the screen, and also working with Studio Mir for your world design, your character designs, and the look of Kipo?
Yeah, it's interesting because at first, a lot of people were coming to us and being like, I don't think you can animate that style. You should change it. And at one point, I think we even did a test where it looked more classic, like a lot of anime,
Right.
And luckily for us, I think Peter Gao literally walked into my office one day and pointed to a poster on the wall that we had drawn during development, and he said, "I don't care what it looks like, just make it look exactly like that." So we went back to the animators, and I think at one point we were like, "Look, I know it looks a little weird. Could you just try to animate it?" And so they a little hesitant, and they did it, and it came back looking awesome. And I think one of them was like, "Oh yeah, it wasn't actually that hard." There's a definite hesitance to try it at first because it looked like it was just gonna be hard. Like the eyes get cut off weirdly, like halfway off the face, and there's a lot of like things that appear like, oh, how's that gonna move, you know?
Sorry, I just wanted to give a big hats off to Studio Mir for taking Rad's style and finding ways to make it animatable. Because we haven't seen a show that looks like his style before. Right. And I mean, a big lesson for me when coming into this role was seeing that challenge and seeing the studio rise to that challenge. And it took work, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. I know they're also working with Angela Sung-Mueller, our art director, who would provide many, expression sheets and acting. We had a great character designers who would do key poses that help them, give them some of the tools to be able to turn it into an animatable style that you can do on a TV production schedule. And I mean, for me, like, it was just beyond my expectations. I think they really knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, I thought, pinch myself, like, I can't believe we got to work with Studio Mir. Like, I mean, they're probably the best in the kind of the Western like market. They're incredible.
Yeah, it's awesome. They did a fantastic job, and it was cool to see your kind of initial designs keep their spirit, keep their recognition. You can recognize your work in the finished product, but you can see their hand in the animation as well, and it worked really, really well. I also definitely want to.
It was amazing to visit too, and like. They're drawing it on paper and scanning it in.
Yeah, crazy. It's cool for like an old animation head like me. It's cool that people are still doing that today. Like it's kind of mind blowing.
Oh man, it's so amazing.
I definitely want to talk about the music of Kipo as well, because that's another standout. I feel like you guys are excelling at like all the boxes you have to kind of tick along the way. You just go like above and beyond because the music is fantastic. So how did you go about finding the right sound for the show?
Well, when me and Bill were doing the pilot, we kind of were just putting in songs we like. And so I'm into a lot of hip hop and indie rock, and we're just kind of putting in stuff, like watching skate videos growing up. And I honestly thought DreamWorks was going to watch that and be like, this is great, but yeah, we're going to have to take all that music out. But instead, we were in the meetings and they were kind of bobbing their head like, that's really cool. And so we worked with, Lehman and as our music supervisor, and James Cartwright, and then we found our composer Daniel Rojas, and they were into the same kind of stuff, which was like really awesome. Like the first time we met here, we were both kind of geeking out about similar types of music, and he was just finishing up Spider-Verse, I think.
Right.
So yeah, every time they would send songs, I was like, dang, this is even better than the one we put in there.
You might notice that a lot of the backgrounds in this world are inspired by the east side of Los Angeles.
Right.
Rad is from Highland Park. I live in Rad lives in Highland Park. I live in Atwater Village, and there's a sound to our side of town. Rad and I have a lot of musical tastes that overlap. And since this is a show that's very much about that world 200 years in the future, we wanted it to sound like that world too. And we realized it was a real opportunity to have a unique musical tapestry. And we're so lucky that DreamWorks backed us up on it, and Netflix too. They were very excited about that. That already named this incredible musical team that they brought to us to realize that. But it's music is such a part of this, our lives, and also the old world, that it felt like it had to be, a part of Kipo. We wanted to make it a musical that's not a musical, not, where people are just breaking out into song, but when they do sing, it's natural to the world and organic to the world, and which is reflective of our world.
Yeah, and it was something, too, that like you're not used to hearing that when you watch a cartoon of this, this demographic or an animated series of this type or this story. So that in itself was refreshing, too. So that made it really nice to watch. And to keep, pushing play or rewinding and listening to a track again, that was just a really rewarding and refreshing experience. I definitely want to talk about your cast, because you guys have assembled quite the cast here. For me, two of the standouts are your lead in Karen Fukuhara, but also Dan Stevens as Scarlemagne, who I did not expect to be so incredible and so intimidating and kind of crazy as this main villain. What was it like seeing these characters come to life and get kind of this reinvigoration of energy as voiced by your cast?
Yeah, I'll start with Kipo a little bit. It was such a pleasure to work with Karen and go into those records, and her personality just coming through. She added so much to that character, and we all just loved, as we started to cut her voice into those animatics, it just really came alive. And in my mind, Bill is the father of Scarlemagne. Talking a little bit about Scarlemagne. We approached Dan Stevens, and he had a very specific vision for the character, and we ran with it. We talked about having him be equal parts Amadeus, the Tom Hulce Amadeus,
right,
and the Joker, as a kind of just a springboard for Dan to dive off of, and rooted in a very real emotional pathos. Somebody who feels like that the old world has slighted them. We've got a real grudge against humanity, and that helped it make it real, while at the same time it could be fun and performed and also scary. Personally, when I was a kid, I loved this character that scared the pants off of me.
Yeah.
And we wanted to, that was a big goal. And I was scared of Dan in the booth, and he's a very sweet guy.
Yeah, and honestly, it's funny that you mentioned the Joker being as sort of just a spiritual inspiration for it, because as I was listening to him, especially when he got into some of his maniacal laughter, I was like, I would like to see Dan Stevens play an animated Joker. So that's actually really funny that you specifically called that out. Before I run out of time with you guys, I'm sure you can't get into specifics about episode order or season order, but Season 1 kind of ends on a bit of a cliffhanger. We get a good resolution, but there's definitely more to the story. So what could you tease about the events of a possible Season 2, if we were to see that?
I think I've been told you have to stay tuned.
That's a good one.
My direct order from DreamWorks.
Fair enough.
I reiterate that.
Perfect. I'll quote you guys on that one. Before I run out of time with you.
The moon boy is looking down at us right now saying, don't say anything.
Exactly. Is there anything else that the two of you are currently working on that you can talk about, or is Kipo pretty much taking up all of your time at the moment?
I'm in development at DreamWorks Feature, but it has nothing to do with Kipo.
Gotcha. Congrats on that.
Kipo is part of my life. I work in a TV writer. I work on lots of things, but I'm working on a show called Man Who Fell to Earth for CBS All Access. That's a lot of fun. It's not animated. It's not a kid's show, but I think what we're doing, we're coming up with some pretty cool stuff.
Gotcha. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more of Kipo and both of whatever you guys are working on in the future. And just want to say thanks again for chatting with me today. And I can't wait for people to check this out. And then hopefully we get to talk again when Season 2 rolls around. So thanks again.